yesterday I read the Torah portion, and I know many of you look forward to listening as I read. You've expressed to me how you enjoy listening to me read the portion. So I decided instead of holding the class for August, I would do my best to continue to read it to you because it is so powerful. To tell you the truth, the Torah is has the only answers for us today. The world is really so upside down. So let me, I'll share the screen. If any of you feel that that you would prefer just to listen without reading, just let me know. Or you can just do that. But we begin in Deuteronomy, let's see, chapter 7, verse 13, and we end at chapter 11, verse 25. And the portion is called Ekev, and the word means heel. Yaakov, our forefather, has his name taken from this because he grabbed onto the heel of Esau. And we begin with, and if you do obey these rules and observe them carefully, your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, will maintain faithfully for you the covenant, the brit, which he made. He made an oath with your fathers. Our fathers were Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God will favor you. Now listen, see, if you obey these rules and observe them carefully. Which rules? All we had at this point were the 10 Commandments. Moses has not written the Torah yet. We had the 10 Commandments. God will favor you and bless you and multiply you, blessing your issue from the womb. When we give birth, we will not be barren. The produce from the soil. Today, it would be not only our produce, but the work of our hands, our new grain, our wine, our oil, the calving of your herd, the lambing of your flock, our businesses in the land sworn to your fathers to be assigned to you. But this can be applied to the lands where we live all over the world because Israel was the prototype, was the microcosm for the whole world. You shall be blessed above all other peoples. He's speaking to Israel. But not only to Israel, but to all those who have joined with us, not to be with us as a people, but to be with our God, like Ruth. Your people are my people, your God is my God. There shall be no sterile male or female among you or among your livestock. Imagine, God has even that in his hands. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh will ward off from you all sickness. Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be a miracle? God will not bring upon you any of the dreadful diseases of Egypt, about which you know, but will inflict them upon all your enemies. So we see how many among us are sick, even myself, and I see it when I'm being disobedient, when I'm caught in something, I have to go back to God because I have disobeyed. It's a constant. I remember our rabbi always saying, read Psalm 139. What verses was it? 23, 24, somewhere in there, where he would say, search me, O God, know my heart, see if there's any wicked way within me, and lead me into your way everlasting. And I pray that. I ask God to search my heart, to see if there's something in me, and he does. And he shows me what I have to work on. And he's speaking now to Israel again. You shall destroy all the peoples that your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, delivers to you, showing them no pity. You shall not worship their gods, for that would be a snare to you. And we have to be careful of that today because there are so many gods. Should you say to yourself, these nations are more numerous than us, how can we dispossess them? You need have no fear of them. You have just to bear in mind what your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, did to Pharaoh and all the Egyptians. That's why we have to be reminded year after year with Pesach, the wondrous acts that you saw with your own eyes, the signs and the wonders the mighty hand and the outstretched arm by which your God, Yud He Vav He, liberated you. I wish I knew how to pronounce that. Thus will your God, Yud He Vav He, keeps repeating it over and over to get it into this keshech oref, our stiff necks, our thick heads. Your God will do to all the peoples you now fear. Your God, Yud He Vav He, will also send a plague against them until those who are left in hiding perish before you. And how many plagues have we seen throughout our history? Not only in Egypt, but throughout the history of our people. Do not stand in dread of them, for your God, Yud He Vav He, is in your midst, a great and awesome God. Your God will dislodge those peoples before you, little by little. You will not be able to put an end to them at once, or else the wild beasts would multiply to your harm. Your God, Yud He Vav He, will deliver them up to you, throwing them into utter panic until they are wiped out. He will always be with us. God will deliver their kings into your hands, and you shall obliterate their name from under the heavens. No one shall stand up to you until you have wiped them out. If only our people living in our land today who have turned away from Torah, turned away from our God, if they would just hear these words, no enemies could come against us. You shall consign the images of their gods to the fire. You shall not covet the silver and gold on them, and keep it for yourself, lest you be ensnared, for that is abhorrent to your God, Yud He Vav He. You must not bring an abhorrent thing, an abominable thing into your house, or you will be prescribed like it. You must reject it as abominable and abhorrent, for it is proscribed. Chapter 8. You shall faithfully observe all the instruction, where does it say here? Mitzvot, the mitzvahs, that God gave to us today, the commandments, that you may thrive, prosper, increase, be able to possess the land that Yud He Vav He promised as an oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When he does these things, he does it in the merits of our forefathers. Mizachut. Remember the long way that your God, Yud He Vav He, has made you travel in the wilderness these past 40 years in order to test you by hardships, to learn what was in your hearts, whether you would keep the divine commandments or not. So remember, as we travel through this wilderness of our lives, it is to test us. And he tests us with hardships. We go through struggles to learn what's in our hearts, to see if we will not turn away from him, but keep his commandments. And it's so important for us to read them over and over until we get them in this cup of ours, this head. God subjected you to the hardship of hunger and then gave you manna to eat. In Hebrew, the word is manhu, but in English it's called manna. And it was a divine bread that appeared miraculously every morning for them to go and collect, which neither you nor your ancestors had ever known, in order to teach you that a human being does not live on bread alone. Our Rabbi Yashuv said that man does not live on bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. He was bringing us back to Torah. But that one may live on anything that Yud He Vav He decrees. We may live on his word. He says, the clothes upon you did not wear out, nor did your feet swell these 40 years. Rabbi Yeshua said, do not worry about what you wear. He was always coming back to Torah. Bear in mind that your God, Yud He Vav He, disciplines you just as a father disciplines his son. If a father loves his son, or a mother, whoever takes care of the home, loves their children, they will discipline us so that we will learn as children right from wrong. And this is what our God does. Because if our parents don't do it, the lessons later on in life become much more difficult. Therefore, keep guard the commandments of your God, Yud He Vav He. Walk in God's ways. That's where we get the word halacha, to walk with him. But the halacha comes from the written Torah. And show reverence, honor to the Lord our God for what he has done. If we're starting to feel down, if we're starting to get upset, stop for a moment and honor him for everything that he's done in our lives. We keep reminding ourselves because our emotions can take over and we can just fall down in fear and look down instead of looking up. For your God, Yud He Vav He, is bringing you into a good land, a land with streams and springs and fountains issuing from plain and hill, a land of wheat and barley, of vines, figs and pomegranates, a land of olive trees and honey, a land where you may eat food without stint, where you will lack nothing, a land whose rocks are iron, and from whose hills you can mine copper. Even the wealth of our nation are in the rocks and the hills. When you have eaten your fill, give thanks to your God, Yud He Vav He, for the good land given to you. I believe this is why we as Jews, we pray after we eat. We give thanks to him after. Take care, lest you forget your God, Yud He Vav He. Remember, do not forget him. He tells them, when you go into a land and you grow fat, means you grow wealthy, do not forget your God. And fail to keep his 10 commandments, his mitzvot, his mishpatim, his chukim, and his laws, his Torah, his chukim, which I command you today. When you have eaten your fill, and you have built fine houses to live in, and your herds and your flocks have multiplied, you have many cars, you have many possessions, your silver and gold has increased, your bank account is full, your portfolio is rich, and everything you own has prospered. Beware. Listen to this. Moses is telling us, beware lest our hearts grow proud, haughty, and we forget our God, Yud He Vav He, who freed us from the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage, who led you through the great and terrible wilderness with its seraph, its snakes and serpents and scorpions. What does seraph mean? I forgot. Here, seraph. Oh, I'll find it later. Oh, here it is. Seraph from Isaiah 14:29. Others, fiery, exact meaning of Hebrew seraph is uncertain, but we read serpents and scorpions, a parched land with no water in it, who brought forth water for you from the flint rock. Remember when Moses struck the rock and water came pouring out from us? This land was not like Egypt. Egypt had the Nile. This land would have to depend upon God, the one who fed us in the wilderness with manna, which your ancestors had never known. And he repeats, in order to test you by hardships, only to benefit you in the end, when we hold fast and hold true. And beware if you say to yourselves, my own power and the might of my own hand have won this wealth for me. Remember that it is your God, Yud He Vav He, who gives you the power to obtain wealth in fulfillment of the covenant made on oath with your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as is still the case today. He fulfills the covenant where he's made with Abraham. I will bless you. I will bless you, the work of your hands, so that you can go out and bless the nations. The blessing was not for us to keep. How many people who are wealthy, who hoard their money instead of sharing it and spreading it? How many billionaires do we have today who all they focus on are making more billions? And how many millions are starving, or billions are starving on this planet? Totally against what God wants from us. If you do forget your God, Yud He Vav He, and follow other gods to serve them or bow down to them, I warn you this day that you shall certainly perish. Like the nations that Yud He Vav He will cause to perish before you, so you shall perish, because you did not heed your God, Yud He Vav He. We have no one to blame but ourselves. Shema Israel, hear, O Israel. You are about to cross the Jordan to go in and dispossess nations greater and more populous than you. Great cities with walls sky high, a people great and tall, the Anakim, of whom you have knowledge. For you have heard it said, who can stand up to the children of Anak? Remember when the spies went in and they came back and they said, these people are giants, we'll never be able to take them? Know then this day that none other than your God, Yud He Vav He, is crossing at your head. He goes before you. He is a devouring fire. It is God who will wipe them out, subduing them before you, that you may quickly dispossess and destroy them, as Yud He Vav He promised you. When your God, Yud He Vav He, has thrust them from your path, do not say to yourselves, Yud He Vav He has enabled us to possess this land because of our virtues, because of us. It's rather because of the wickedness of those nations that the Lord, Yud He Vav He, is dispossessing them from before you. Remember, it's not because of us. It's because of how wicked those nations were. It's not because of your virtues and your uprightness, your rectitude, that you will be able to possess their country. Don't be so proud of yourself that you did this on your own. It's because of their wickedness that the Lord your God is dispossessing those nations before you in order to fulfill the oath that Yud He Vav He made to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those nations were merciless. Know that, again, he repeats it, know then that it is not for any virtue of yours that your God, Yud He Vav He, is giving you this land to possess, for you are a stiff-necked people. Kesheh oref, stiff-neck, stubborn. That's us. How often do we listen? We don't want to hear. We don't want to see. Our prophet says, you have eyes, but you cannot see. You have ears, but you will not hear. We stiff-necked. Remember, never forget how we provoked our God. You provoked your God, Yud He Vav He, to anger in the wilderness. From the day you left the land of Egypt until you reached this place, you continued to be defiant toward Yud He Vav He. Our rabbis have elevated the people at the time of Moses. We were not obedient. We were defiant. We kept complaining, which is why we ended up 40 years in the desert. At Horeb, which is Mount Sinai, you provoked Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh so much that he was angry enough with you to have destroyed you. And here Moses is saying, I had descended the mountain to receive the tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant, the 10 commandments that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh made with you. He made that covenant with us. But believe it or not, that covenant was more of a reminder, because in Genesis, when it said he breathed his ruach, his spirit into us, he implanted these 10 commandments in our hearts, so that when we read them again, a light goes on. It rings as true. And here Moses is saying, I stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights, eating no bread and drinking no water. Only God could have sustained them through that, because I try to fast, I can't make it through a day. And Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh gave me the 2 tablets of stone, inscribed by the finger of God. Listen again. Moses did not write the 10 commandments. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh gave Moses the 2 tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God. This is a euphemism. God doesn't have a finger, he is spirit. But he wrote the exact words that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh had addressed to you on the mountain out of fire on the day of the assembly. And at the end of those 40 days and nights, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh gave me, Moses, the 2 tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant. And he said to me, hurry, go down from here at once, for the people whom you brought out of Egypt have acted wickedly. They have been quick to stray from the path that I enjoined upon them. They have made themselves a molten image. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh further said to me, I see this is a stiff-necked people. Let me alone, and I will destroy them and blot out their name from under heaven, and I will make you a nation far more numerous than they. And Moses started down the mountain, a mountain ablaze with fire, the 2 tablets of stones in his 2 hands. And he said, I saw how you sinned against your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. You had made yourself a golden calf. You had been quick to stray from the path that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh had pleaded, had given you, had put upon you. Thereupon I gripped the 2 tablets and I flung them away with both my hands, smashing them before your eyes. I threw myself down before Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, eating no bread and drinking water 40 days and 40 nights as before. Remember, he went back up. Because with a great wrong you had committed. He stood in the gap before us. He was the Mashiach of that day, doing what displeased and vexed Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. He stood there for us. For I was in dread of that fierce anger against you, which moved Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh to wipe you out. And at that time, too, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh gave heed to me. He listened to me. Moreover, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh was angry enough with Aaron to have destroyed him. So I also interceded for Aaron at that time. Well, there's an answer for why we know Aaron wasn't destroyed. Moses interceded for him. Also for that sinful thing you had made, the calf, I took it, put it to fire. I broke it to bits, ground it thoroughly until it was fine as dust. I threw its dust into the brook that comes from the mountain. Again, you provoked Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh at Taberah, at Massah, and at Kibrot Hada'ava. Now, those can all be found in the book. Tabera were the rabble rousers, the Asaf Suf, not the Erev Rav that's been translated, but the rabble rousers from Numbers 11 who rebelled against God. At Massa, it had to do with the water, just like at Meribah, we complained about water. That was in Exodus 17. And at Kibrot, it was, he sent plagues upon us because of we ate the quail. We were demanding meat, and God sent us quail. That's again in Numbers 11. It was because of lust and greed. When Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh sent you on from Kadesh Barnea, saying, go up, take possession of the land that I am giving you, you flouted the command of your God, whom you did not put your trust in or obey. That is so important. Our rabbi used to teach us that the first thing that God gave us was free will. Free will means that we have the right to choose. He doesn't make our decisions for us. He gave us free will. And then he gave us the gift of emunah, which is faith. He put faith in each and every one of us at conception. It's a seed that can grow. How do we grow it? We grow it by using faith to take action to do something that God tells us to do. And that's how we build our trust in him. We watch what he does as we take a step of faith and build our trust. And we must obey him. And when we obey, it's not only about doing things, because God measures our kavanah, our intentions. He knows our hearts. If we're doing something for show, doesn't mean anything to him. He knows our hearts. As long as I have known you, you have been defiant toward you at Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. I spent the first half of my life in defiance. When I lay prostrate before Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh those 40 days and nights, because Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh was determined to destroy you, I prayed to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh and said, O Lord, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, do not annihilate your very own people, whom you redeemed in your majesty, and whom you freed with a mighty hand. Give thought to your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and don't listen. Pay no heed to the stubbornness of this people, to their wickedness, their sinfulness, or else the country, he's talking about Egypt now, from which you freed us, will say, it was because you, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, was powerless to bring them into the land promised to them, because of having rejected them, that their God, the Egyptian God, brought them out to have them die in the desert. Oh, I don't understand this. Wait a minute. It was because of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh was powerless to bring them into the land promised them, and because of having rejected them, that their God brought them out to have them die in the wilderness. I don't know why this God is not capitalized here. That's what confused me. Yet they are your very own people, whom you freed with your great might and your outstretched arms. See how he repeats over and over and over. I remember our rabbi used to say, I'm sorry that I repeat myself, but if you don't get it the first time, I'm going to repeat it the second. And if you don't get it the second, I'm going to repeat it the third. And that's what God does. He repeats over and over and over so that we will learn and listen. And he reminds us that life is like a spiral where we seem to go round and round, like we did round and round the mountain, Mount Sinai. But we're never at the same place. We're always at a higher level. Therefore, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh said to me, carve out 2 tablets of stone like the first, and come up to me on the mountain, and make an ark of wood. And I will inscribe on the tablets the commandments that were on the first tablets that you smashed, and you shall deposit them in the ark. So again, we see it is God who is writing them. It is the Yud He Vav He, the master, the creator of the universe, who is writing these tablets. I made an ark of acacia wood. How many of us have searched for this ark and carved out 2 tablets of stone like the first? I took the 2 tablets with me and went up the mountain. After inscribing on the tablets the same text as on the first, the 10 commandments that Yud He Vav He spoke to you on the mountain out of the fire on the day of the gathering, Yud He Vav He gave them to me. Then I left and went down from the mountain, and I deposited the tablets into the ark that I had made, where they still are, as Yud He Vav He had commanded me. From Be'erot ben Ya'akan, let me see in the Hebrew, from Bnei A'u, Bnei Israel, where is it? Bnei Ya'akan. The Israelites marched to Mosera. Aaron died there and was buried there, and his son Eleazar became priests in his place. And from there they marched from Gudgod, and from Gudgod to Yotbat, a region of running brooks. At that time, Yud He Vav He set apart the tribe of Levi, or Levi, to carry the ark of Yud He Vav He's covenant, to stand in attendance upon Yud He Vav He, to bless in God's name, as is still the case. That is why Levi has received no hereditary portion along with its kin. Yud He Vav He is its portion, as your God, Yud He Vav He, spoke concerning you. I stayed on the mountain, as I did the first time, 40 days and 40 nights, and Yud He Vav He heeded me once again. He agreed not to destroy you. And Yud He Vav He said to me, get up, resume the march at the head of the people, that they may go in and possess the land that I swore to your fathers to give them. This is so important. Listen to what Moses is saying. And now, O Israel, what does the Lord, Yud He Vav He, demand of you? Only this, to revere, to honor your God, Yud He Vav He, to walk in his paths, to love. And love is not a guji-muji, as our rabbi would say, Hollywood love. Ahava in Hebrew has to do to be loyal to him, to serve him. That is true worship. The word worship came from the word workmanship, serving, doing. Everything that God asks us to do with all our heart and our soul, keeping the Lord's mitzvot, his commandments, and his chukim. The chukim are the Shabbat and the honor our father and mother, and any of those things that we may not understand that he asks us to do, which he is commanding us to do today. For his good? No, for our good. Mark the heavens to their outermost reaches. They belong to your God, the earth and everything that's in it. Everything that we see on this earth belongs to God, not to us. Yet it was to your ancestors that the Lord was drawn out of his love for them, so that you, their lineal descendants, were chosen from among all the people, as is now the case. All those who come from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were chosen from among all the people. Cut away, therefore. And it's translated in other versions. I love this. Cut away, therefore, the thickening about your hearts. In other versions, it says, circumcise your hearts. In other words, cut away the thickening about your hearts. How can we relate to that today? Just imagine, as we get older, I had a surgery called cataract surgery. The surgeon cut away the thickening that had grown over my eyes so that I could see. Here, God is saying, cut away the thickening of our hearts. And what is the heart in Hebrew? It has to do with our thoughts, our intentions, our mind, the things we want to do. It's all about action, thought, what we think we then do. And do not stiffen your necks anymore. Do not be stubborn because you think you know what God is saying and you refuse. If you say, I will never surrender, that is so dangerous to your lives. Don't complain when you suffer. For your God, Yud-He-Vav-He, is God supreme and Lord supreme, the great, the mighty, the awesome God who shows no favor. He doesn't favor one over the other, not rich or poor, not weak or powerful. He takes no bribes, which is why he tells us not to do the same. You can't bribe God. He knows your heart. You can't buy him. We can't appease him like the nations do with their gods, a pocket god who they carry in their pockets and take it out when they want. He wants us to do this. He upholds the cause of the fatherless, the orphan, and the widow, and befriends the stranger. And who is the stranger? The ger, the non-Israelite, who lives among us, who wants, like Ruth, to follow our God. She says, I will be your people. I will have your God, my God. We need to provide for them food and clothing as he does. You too must befriend the ger, the stranger, remembering that we were strangers in the land of Egypt. You must revere Yud-He-Vav-He. Oh, going back here, this reminds me, excuse me. The stranger, it says in Numbers 15:15, observes everything that was given to us. All the Torah is for us and the stranger among us. There is no Shabbos Goy. There is no one to come in and open the lights for us or do whatever it is we ask them to do. The Torah is for them too. You must revere the Lord. Yud-He-Vav-He. Only your God shall you worship, shall you serve. To him shall you hold fast, cling to him, and by God's name shall you swear. The Lord is your glory and your God, who wrought from you those marvelous, awesome deeds that you saw with your own eyes. We may not today have seen them, but when we read them in the Torah, we can know that they are true and we can trust him. Your ancestors went down to Egypt, 70 persons. 70 in Gematria is from the nations. There are 70 nations. And now your God has made you as numerous as the stars of heaven. Love, therefore, obey, be loyal to your God, Yud-He-Vav-He. Always keep his charge, keep his commandments, his rules. Here, what does it say? Mishmarto, Mishamarto, Ve'hukotai, his hukim, his mishpatim, and his mitzvot. The first 3 commandments are mitzvot, how we are to relate to the Lord our God. The second 2 commandments are chukim, for us to love ourselves by keeping the Shabbat and honoring our parents, so that our days may be long upon this land, and his mishpatim, the last 5, so that we can love our neighbor as we love ourselves. He's always, coming back to his 10 commandments written in stone. Everything else is commentary. Everything else, if it doesn't agree with these, throw it out. It's written by man. Take thought this day. Obey. Listen. It's not your children. That it was not your children who neither experienced nor witnessed the lesson of the Lord your God. God's majesty, his mighty hand and outstretched arms, the signs and the deeds that God performed in Egypt against Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and all his land. And one day he will perform the same against all the pharaohs of this earth and all his land, Israel, beginning from Israel, because it says, for the word of the Lord shall come up from Jerusalem to the whole world. And when we read in Zechariah at the end, all nations shall come to worship in the holy land of Yerushalayim. Give heed to what God did to Egypt's army, to his horses and chariots, how Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh rolled back upon them the waters of the Sea of Reeds when they were pursuing you, thus destroying them once and for all. What God did for you in the wilderness before you arrived in this place, and what God did, remember what he did to Datan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, son of Reuben, the firstborn of Yaakov, when the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them, along with their households, their tents, and every living thing in their train from amidst all Israel. But it was you who saw with your own eyes all the marvelous deeds that the Lord performed. Keep, therefore, all the mitzvot, the instructions that I command you this day. Mitzvah, sorry for my Hebrew, but this comes from mitzvah, chayom, this day. Oh, let's go back. So that you may have the strength to enter and take possession of the land that you are about to cross into and possess, that you may long endure upon the soil that the Lord swore to your fathers to assign to them and to their heirs, a land flowing with milk and honey. For the land that you are about to enter and possess is not like the land of Egypt from which you have come. Remember, I said they had the Nile. There, the grain you sowed had to be watered by your own labors. You had to go to the Nile and bring the water like the vegetable garden. But the land you are about to cross into and possess, a land of hills and valleys, it soaks up its water like a sponge from the rains of heaven. It is the land which the Lord your God looks after, on which your God Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh always keeps an eye from year's beginning to year's end. He's still looking at this land. It belongs to him. He doesn't change. He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. If then you obey the commandments that I enjoin upon you this day, loving, being obedient, being loyal to the Lord your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, serving, working for him with all your heart and soul, I will grant the rain for your land in season, the early rain and the late. You shall gather in your grain and wine and oil. I will provide grass in the fields for your cattle, and thus you shall eat your fill. But take care not to be lured away to serve other gods and bow down to them. Don't bow down to the god of money, to that golden calf. For the Lord's anger will flare up against you, shutting up the skies so that there will be no rain, and the ground will not yield its produce. You will soon perish from the good land that the Lord God, Yud He Vav He, is assigning to you. It doesn't mean that we cannot be wealthy or we can't be rich, but the love of money is the root of all evil, not money itself. But if we are rich and we prosper, it's to share. Therefore, impress these my words upon your very heart. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Now, this is very similar to what we read before about circumcising our hearts. Now, here's where our sages get the idea of the tefillin, binding on our hands. We wrap it around, serving as a symbol on our foreheads. But really, it wasn't to be taken literally. It was always to remind us that everything that we do with our hands has to come from the heart of God, has to honor God. And a symbol on our forehead is to remind us that whatever we think about, whatever we see has to have God, we have God with us. And next, teach them to your children. This is part of the Shema, reciting them when you stay at home. The Vavcha, when you're away, when you lie down, when you get up, when you inscribe them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. We put the mezuzah on our gates to the end that you and your children may endure in the land that the Lord swore to your fathers to give to them. He was giving us this land. We just needed to go in and take it. It wasn't going to be easy, but he was giving it to us as long as there is a heaven over the earth. If then you faithfully, he's repeating, keep all these instructions, these mitzvot, this Torah that I command you, loving your God, halakha, walking in all God's ways and holding fast to God, then God will dislodge before you all these nations. You will dispossess nations greater and more numerous than you. Every spot on which your foot treads shall be yours. And later we will read about where Joshua puts his feet. Your territory, you can take out a map and look at this territory, shall extend from the wilderness of Lebanon, from the great river Euphrates to the western sea. No one shall stand up to you. Your God will put the dread and fear of you over the whole land in which you set foot as promised. And next week we will look at Re. So it's not about us becoming religious fanatics. It's not about us keeping crazy kosher. You can't eat this and you can't eat that, and you can't do this and you can't do that. It's about keeping, you see behind me, I have the 10 Commandments and the Torah, the scroll that I have behind me. It is about keeping his Torah. And they're not easy to keep. They may be simple enough when we hear them. The first 3, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Have no other gods before me. Do not bow down to worship them. Don't make statues to bow down to worship them. Don't speak in God's name. Don't take his name in vain. The first 3, 4 and 5. Honor the Sabbath. Don't work on the Sabbath. Don't make your servants work. Don't keep your businesses open. Keep the Shabbat. It's a sign that God exists. The last 5, the Mishpatim, don't murder your neighbor. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal from them. Don't speak against them. No lashon hara, no gossip. And the last one, do not covet. Don't be greedy. Be happy for people. These are hard to do because our heart has part yetzer hara, which grows over time if we allow it. but feed the Yetzer HaTov, the good inclination of our hearts, by reading these commandments and loving them with all our hearts, with all our soul, and with all our might. And so that is all for today. I hope you enjoy this. I know it's hard to listen to, but pray, ask God, search your heart, ask God to reveal himself to you so that you will know that he is real, and you would be willing, at least be willing to follow him. Don't be stiff-necked like Pharaoh, because one day you won't have a choice anymore. Thank you for listening, and have a wonderful, blessed day and the rest of your week. And I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.